Outside, the night was cold and wet, with a wild wind howling down the lonely street. Inside the small cottage, the curtains were closed and a fire burned brightly. Mr. White and his son Herbert played chess, while the old mother sat knitting by the fire. They were waiting for a guest, an old friend who had spent 20 years traveling the world with the army. Soon, heavy footsteps approached, and Sergeant Major Morris entered the warm room. As the evening went on, Morris drank his wine and spoke of wild scenes, brave battles, and strange people in faraway lands. Mr. White listened with deep interest. "You mentioned a strange monkey's paw the other day," Mr. White said. Morris put down his glass and reached into his pocket. He pulled out a small, dried-up paw. "It is just an ordinary little thing to look at," Morris said, "but an old holy man in India put a spell on it. He wanted to show that fate ruled people's lives, and that those who interfered with it did so to their own sorrow." The soldier explained that the spell allowed 3 separate men to each have 3 wishes from the paw. "The first man had his 3 wishes," Morris whispered, his voice turning cold. "I do not know what the first 2 wishes were, but the 3rd wish was for death. That is how I got the paw." Suddenly, Morris threw the paw into the fire. Mr. White cried out and quickly snatched it from the flames. "If you do not want it, give it to me," Mr. White said. Morris shook his head grimly. "I threw it on the fire. If you keep it, do not blame me for what happens." After the soldier left, the family stared at the creepy object. Herbert laughed and said they should wish for 200 pounds to pay off the house. Mr. White smiled nervously. He held the paw up high. "I wish for 200 pounds, he said clearly. Suddenly, he let out a shriek and dropped the paw. "It moved," he cried, staring at the floor in horror. "As I wished, it twisted in my hand like a snake." The family sat in an uneasy silence as the fire died down, unaware of the darkness they had just invited into their lives. The next morning, the sun shone brightly into the room, and the terrors of the night before seemed like a distant dream. Herbert laughed at his father's fears before leaving for his job at the factory. Later that afternoon, Mrs. White noticed a strange man pacing outside the house. He was dressed in expensive clothes and looked extremely nervous. Finally, the man opened the gate and walked up to the front door. Mrs. White brought him inside. The stranger stood in the living room, refusing to sit down. "I come from Ma and Megan's, the factory where your son works," the man said softly. Mrs. White gasped, her heart filling with a terrible dread. "Is something wrong? Is Herbert hurt?" The stranger looked down at the floor. "He is badly hurt," the man said, "but he is not in any pain." The old mother realized the horrible truth. "He was caught in the heavy machinery," the stranger whispered. "He did not survive." The old parents sat in a state of complete shock, paralyzed by grief. The stranger cleared his throat nervously. "The company says they are not responsible for the accident," he said. "However, in consideration of your son's long service, they wish to present you with a certain sum of money as compensation." Mr. White looked up, his eyes blank and empty. "How much?" he whispered. The stranger answered, 200 pounds. Mr. White let out a terrible cry and fell senseless to the floor. Days passed, and the house became a place of silent, crushing sorrow. One night, a week after the funeral, Mrs. White woke up screaming in the dark. The paw she cried out, grabbing her husband. "The monkey's paw. We still have 2 wishes left." Mr. White begged her to go back to sleep, but she was wild with grief. "Go downstairs and get it," she demanded, her eyes wide. "We must wish our boy back to life. Bring him back." Mr. White went downstairs into the pitch-black living room, his hands shaking as he found the dried paw. He felt a deep, primal terror. The body of his son had been crushed beyond recognition, and it had been decaying in the ground for days. What would walk through the door? He went back upstairs. His wife stood waiting by the window. "Wish," she screamed. Mr. White raised the paw. "I wish my son to be alive again," he whispered. The paw fell to the ground. They stood in the dark, listening to the absolute silence. Minutes passed. Nothing happened. Then, far away down the lonely street, a low sound broke the silence. A knock. It was a soft knock at the front door. Mrs. White gasped. "It is Herbert," she cried, running toward the stairs. Mr. White grabbed her in pure panic. "Do not go down there," he begged. But the knocking came again, louder this time. Knock, knock, knock. Mrs. White broke free and ran down the stairs, struggling with the heavy door lock. Mr. White fell to his knees, frantically searching the dark floor for the paw, desperate to make his final wish before his wife could open the door to whatever was waiting outside.